Greetings, everybody. It's Jim. When games come out with a new edition, usually it's pretty well received. And it's done for two reasons. One is a streamlining of the rules after thousands of hours of play, input from the fans, rethinking of the author. It gets a new lease on life there. Another reason is because of the printing process. If a game's been out for a decade or even two, it gives them a chance to get a facelift. Because, as we know right now, if you've been in gaming for any length of time, the printing processes and manufacturing has gone through the roof as far as changes go. Okay, but sometimes just because an edition changes doesn't necessarily mean it evolves. It can change into a different game, but it doesn't mean the older versions were actually worse. Some games in the 80s and 90s definitely needed an upgrade, and the new edition was the best edition. But anymore, they just change. It doesn't evolve, it just changes. And today I'm going to be talking to you about why I prefer GURPS 3rd edition, not 4th edition, and specifically from the 3rd edition, why I like this version, this book here with this cover, over the other revised edition. So today I'm going to be going over with you why I prefer GURPS 3rd edition. If you've ever heard an experienced dungeon master say all you need is the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Player's Handbook, and the Monster Manual, and that's all you need save for maybe the modules, this is the same kind of reasoning that I would say I would push this book into your hands above any other GURPS books, because it is all that you need. The new 4th edition has a book for the Game Master and for the player, and you might say, well, they're just as thick, so isn't there more meat to it than this? And that's true, but some of it's not. I don't know if it's necessary or not. It does talk, the Game Master's book in the 4th edition does talk about going into other worlds, multiverse, and all that. Not necessarily that you need this. All I really want is the character creation process, the combat system, some information for the Game Master, and of course, to try to cover as many genres as possible. And this definitely does it. It does everything from low fantasy to Old West to modern to space to superpowers. This does it all. So you don't need anything else but this little book right here. So if I was ever going to have a comments word down below, this is going to be it. Okay, so be nice, agree to disagree, all right? Basically, what this is about passive defense. 4th edition eliminated passive defense, so why am I partial to it? Well, the thing is, let's explain what passive defense is first off. Basically, armor is armor just like in any other case. It's got damage resistance, which of course subtracts from any damage coming in. However, they also have, each piece of armor also has a point defense value, which allows for the armor to turn a blow in the first place, so the attacker cannot get a solid hit in because of the way it's shaped or whatever. All right, and so basically that passive defense has a statistic, and it's added to all 3 of the active defenses. So in other words, it's passive, right? It's there all the time. You don't have to think about it at all. While the active defenses, the character's got to choose which one they're going to use. They're going to use dodge, which is based off their movement value plus passive defense. Their parry value, which is their weapon skill divided by 2 plus their passive defense. Or block, which is their shield skill divided by 2 plus their passive defense. And the reason this is really a cool idea is because of the man-to-man kind of combat system that GURPS is. It's not a 5-second kind of generality like Dungeons & Dragons or the Fantasy Trip. It's, blow for blow, 1 second each, 1 second a turn. And it just adds for more flavor. So, for instance, the character on the right has a pot helm, which gives him a damage reduction of 4 and a passive defense of 3. He could have another helm, which also has a damage reduction of 4, but maybe a passive defense of only 2. It's just another variable to make armor a little bit different than just 1, 2, 3, 4 damage reduction. It just changes it up a lot. And of course, weights and all that stuff add to it. And that's part of the detail of the game. So I don't want to lose that. Now, the thing is, there's an exploit that was found about a character that had so much armor on with such high passive defense that they actually had a bigger dodge score than somebody that had no armor that was super nimble and quick, which bothered a lot of people. And I got to look into it maybe a little bit more. But at the end of the day, is it really a major exploit, or is it just one example that maybe a game master could control. Tell me what you think, and I mean this seriously. I'm not saying this because I want the algorithm to see all the action down below. I really want to learn more about it. I've looked on the Steve Jackson Games website and stuff like that, but I really want to hear more about what everybody thinks about passive defense and knows. Hey everybody, if you care about board gaming history, you're going to want to go check out Quebec 1759 on Kickstarter right now. It's the first game back then to use blocks as a means of fog of war in the game. And of course, Dungeon Runner has a PDF version that I just put out that's on Kickstarter, and you can get a deck as low as $1. Alright, so what we're looking at here is GURPS 3rd edition revised. Not this 3rd edition, the revised edition that came out after. They added a few things as an appendixes at the end that they wanted to, but also it was also a cosmetic upgrade. And I wouldn't call it a cosmetic upgrade though. Mainly the fault comes down to the layout and the text. And it sure isn't because of the artwork, because the artwork is absolutely beautiful, and this guy's called Dan Smith. And what I'm showing you here is his artwork from Silent Death: The Next Millennium. Okay, his artwork, if you see his stuff any length of time, you know who he is. That's how you can tell a good artist, right? Like Earl Otis and stuff like that. This guy has a lot of testosterone and chaos thrown into his stuff, and at the right kind of levels too, because here it's all action. It's very definitely clean, but he's also drawn for Illuminati, the collectible card game in 1994, which when you got conspiracy theories and all that stuff, a little bit of chaos in the background's good, and he definitely added to that. However, here it just kind of loses, and why is that? Is because of the layouts and the font choice. Okay, there's too much going on now, and it's the layouts deck. I shouldn't say necessarily the layout because it's kind of the same. You know, it's got text over here and a sidebar over here, but there's something about the fonts that just are not as solid like they are in the 3rd edition book. I wish I had a PDF to show you of that, but again, I'll just go refer you back to the Silent Death book and how easy that is to read with the fonts that they chose. It looks like the fonts that they chose in this edition are just too fancy for its own good. Even the basic text is just, I don't know, and maybe it's because they're adding things like the character in there and they're trying to do the word wrap thing. I don't know. It just doesn't catch me as easily readable, and my eyes are going all over the place. So I really just don't like it. Now, speaking of layout, let's look at 4th edition here. And at first I didn't notice anything really wrong. Okay, it's fine enough. It's formatted fine, but there's something not as readable as the 3rd edition. Okay, and the reason comes down to the columns, and you know, here there's 3 columns to a page, and that's 6 columns to a 2-page spread. While here, you know, you have the meat column here and then maybe a sidebar, but the thing is, when you're looking at the meat column, it's heading. It's all on the left-hand side, pushed to the left-hand side. Here, if you're looking something up, even if you're directed by the index, you're kind of looking around saying, where is the spot that I'm looking for? You're going to find what you need, a little bit of information easier in the 3rd edition. And also, talking about artwork, there's something about the 4th edition that just kind of fell flat with the artwork for me. I really didn't take to it. It didn't really mean anything to me. And also seeing the same characters in a game that's supposed to be generic, where, you know, it's like anything. They tended to show, and I know why they did it, they showed the same 6 characters and such, and because I think they were pushing that multiverse thing, where it's like, these characters are going through different worlds, and they're a team and stuff like that, which is kind of the antithesis to me, though, as the feel of a game that you're going anywhere and anything with all the different people, with everybody different. And so seeing the same 4 characters over and over again, I don't think that was the right move to make. Now, full disclosure, as I mentioned earlier, the biggest reason I put this in your hands is because it's the only book that you really need. That doesn't mean it's going to be the only book you end up with, and that includes yours truly. As I've been doing this video, I've been mulling these things over for a little bit. I said, no, I only need this. And Resistance is good, but also kind of futile, okay? So I don't want all the books. I don't want to get collecting, but there are books that I want that probably would expand the genre to a point that would not just help me with GURPS, but also its sister game, The Fantasy Trip, you know, because, I mean, this is for 3 players or less, or 3 characters or less, less, and Fantasy Trip is more for 4 or more characters because of the scale, which you can see in my other videos, the scale of GURPS. But here, I'm only missing 2 books out of here, and that's Espionage and Martial Arts. Martial Arts being a really good one, especially for GURPS, because of the way the combat works and so detailed that I really want to explore that again. I had that book. I had so many of these GURPS books. But you notice that all of these are like 2nd edition and less, right? Why don't I get the new books? Because the new books, first off, it's just the continuity of maybe the look, you know. But the second is probably I don't need as much. They probably added more and more and more to the later ones, while these ones were probably more, you know, just the basics again. You know, it's just really good and solid. Plus the artwork. I mean, you know, like I was talking about continuity. The fantasy is 1st edition. That cover, man, that cover. Come on. I mean, that's awesome. I want that on my shelf. And that's a harder one to come by, as a matter of fact, because they had some problems with how they portrayed Islam, I think. And they said, well, we don't want, because the 1st edition with Treadroy and Caithness, which was definitely a knights in shining armor kind of thing against Islam, they made that world setting, and they actually... They said maybe they were making Islam look a little bad, so they just cut it out entirely. But the thing is that fantasy also has magic with it. So I don't need a fantasy book and a magic book. I can just get that book and get the best of both worlds. Now, some people would say, hey, Jim, you do want supers because this doesn't have supers. Well, that's not really true because psionics is in this. And that psionics are the same rules, really, as what's in supers, okay, with maybe a small exception. But the bottom line is, and I know people say that supers doesn't work for GURPS, and that's probably true when you're having that many superpowers and with so many people, you have to go a little bit more narrative with it. And having something that works like GURPS probably doesn't, but it doesn't mean that you wouldn't want the superpowers in maybe other campaigns. Having a character with a power or two is a little bit more easier to work with than regular Marvel or DC characters, which have tons of powers, and you're trying to figure out how they work against each other, right? So that's probably a thing there. But yeah, I definitely think this is all you need, but there's nothing wrong with getting a little bit more. And if I had to push you off the fence with anything at all, it's just because this version is so affordable. To get into GURPS now, if you're just going to get you need both books, so it's going to cost you about $100. This would cost you $25 on eBay, and it would be a good copy, and it would include shipping. Okay, so that's really a great way to go. Now, if you wanted to get a crisp copy, you could go to Drive-Thru RPG or Steve Jackson Games. Mind you, I think they only have the 3rd edition revised available. You might want to ask them if they can make this version available. Hopefully they can. But even those source books that I was talking about earlier, those are only $4 to $9 a piece as a PDF. You really don't lose. I mean, as a matter of fact, I may not hunt them down on eBay at all and just get them and just go print on demand. That might be the way to go. But either way, guys, I hope I've convinced you to check out this version, 3rd edition of GURPS, and I'll see you next video.